Thanks for pressing play. This is Christopher Lochhead, Follow Your Different, where we celebrate the people, ideas, and companies that stand out. We're proud to be sponsored by Oracle NetSuite. To learn how to turbocharge the growth of your business, visit netsuite.com/different today. And there, as a listener to this podcast, you will have the opportunity to set up a 1-hour free growth review with an expert in your industry. Learn to get your grow on at netsuite.com/different. Now, speaking of growth, on this episode, an entrepreneur that I have admired for years and just got to meet him doing this podcast. His name is Brian Scudamore. He's the founder of the legendary 1-800-GOT-JUNK. That's right, 800-GOT-JUNK. He's here. They are the world's largest junk removal business, the self-described FedEx of junk, which I've always loved from the first time I heard it. Brian's the author of a great new book with a title that I love. The title is called WTF, Willing to Fail, How Failure Can Be Your Key to Success. Brian and I have a great conversation that I know you'll love about entrepreneurship, perseverance, about how you can be a legendary entrepreneur even in a non-sexy field like junk removal. We of course talk about why failure is so legendary and why all of us need to embrace our losery and a lot more. Go to lochhead.com to check out the show notes for this episode. You'll get the key takeaways as well as learn more about Brian and his new book, WTF, Willing to Fail. Now, hey ho, let's go.
People often say, why didn't I think of that? It's so simple. It's just a pickup truck and hauling away stuff from people's homes. But the gap that I saw years into the business was nobody had professionalized the company. Nobody had professionalized the space, rather. And we set out to build the FedEx of junk removal and add uniforms and friendliness. And it's had a game-changing world on the space.
I'll never forget that slogan. You had that in the early days, and I remember it was on your homepage for a while, was it not?
The stash your trash in a flash slogan?
Well, that and the FedEx of junk.
Oh, the FedEx of junk removal. Yeah, so FedEx of junk removal, that was just, we were trying to give people a sense of what is it that we're really trying to create. We're differentiating ourselves. When you look at Starbucks, a brand I love, and how they were creating the third place, if you look at what the coffee space used to be, mom and pop coffee shops on every corner. And now it's a brand we identify with that we go into in whatever city we're traveling in. I wanted to do the same thing. I wanted to FedEx the junk removal space.
It's such genius. And I seem to remember, I hope I'm remembering this right. At one point on your homepage, you had some wonderful headline about like, our junk removal process or something to that effect. Number 1, you have junk. Number 2, you call us to come get the junk. And number
Right.
3, we take away the junk, or something like that. Am I remembering this?
Yeah, you've got a great memory, better one than me, but it's one of those things where I remember we just wanted to lay out the process. And we've even brought the 3-step process down to just simply, you point, junk disappears. And that's Roy Williams, the Wizard of Ads, and his magic, capturing the magic in our brand, saying, really, all you do is point. And we did radio commercials and TV where you've got people now to the point being so familiar with the brand that our truck teams will show up and customers will start pointing, will you take that and that and that, poof, and so they're kind of mocking us in a fun way.
Yeah. And so, so how fun. Now, if I remember your story right, you were in college and you needed to just pay the bills. And so you started doing this. Am I remembering this one right as well?
Yeah, you're close. So
Okay.
The story was I never finished high school. I talked my way into college and I had to find a way to fund my college education. My parents, my dad's a liver transplant surgeon. And I remember he said,
what? Your dad's
college.
a what?
A liver transplant surgeon.
Wow.
And so he's done more schooling than anyone I know. And he wasn't going to fund my college degree if I couldn't even finish high school. And so
he was tough on you.
He was tough on me. He was definitely a tough dad, but looking back, I appreciate that my dad taught me a work ethic. He taught me how to have passion for something. He taught me how to make my own decisions and find my way. So even when I sat down with him in 1993 with a year left of my degree, and I said, Dad, I got some good news for you. I'm dropping out of university. And he said, how does that appear to be good news? And I said, well, I'm learning so much more about business by running one more than I was studying in school. And I made a tough decision, one he did not agree with, but he did tell me and taught me how to make decisions and stick to my guns.
Now, the other thing I find fascinating about you, and I've been dying to ask you this question, Brian. Um, Legendary entrepreneurs see a problem that either others don't see at all or they see it in a unique or different way. And as a result of looking at that problem in that way, of course, then they then have a solution to that problem. And so I'm curious sort of how this evolution of identifying this strategic junk removal problem
Mhm.
evolved in your mind. Like, where did that aha come from, or how did it happen over time? Or well, take me through it if you could.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I might weigh in on that debate a little bit, or I might create a little debate that I don't know that entrepreneurs necessarily look at something and say, there's a problem and I want to put a solution in place. Or it might be that they've come up with something because of an opportunity. For me, a way to pay for college. Fred DeLuca, who was a mentor of mine, who needed to pay for his university for medical school, which he never ended up completing, but he started the business Subway. And so I think what entrepreneurs often do is they see the opportunity, they jump on it, but then they see problems start to appear. And what they do is they iterate. So for me, it was never about junk removal, it was about college. It then became, after several years, me seeing an opportunity that what I chanced upon, this junk removal business, wow, every time I traveled to the United States or went to any major city, I saw beat up old pickup trucks, plywood sides, just like I had, hauling away junk. But the opportunity that presented itself to me, or one that I spotted by thinking differently, was how come no one's FedEx this? How come no one's professionalized this space? And I think the same thing again with Fred DeLuca, or you can take Zuckerberg from Facebook. What he tried to do, and the opportunity of getting to know fellow students and getting the word out there and connect people in one school became Facebook. I don't think he intended to create Facebook in the same way that I didn't intend to revolutionize the junk removal space.
And so, was it just a matter of you needed to pay the bills as a student? You
Correct.
thought, well, I have a truck, I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
And then this aha that you could professionalize it, you could FedEx junk. When did that happen?
That was about 1993 when I left college and I focused on this full time. I started to really see that we could do it more professionally than others. So that meant having our ads for the company was called the Rubbish Boys at the time, and our phone number was 738 Junk. We had those emblazoned off across the sides of the trucks. But I think that the whole FedEx concept started to come about 10 years after I had created the business. $1 million in business after 8 years. The business started to look, feel, and act very much like a franchise after reading a book called The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. And I think at
One
that
of my
point,
all-time favorites, Brian. And I
oh yeah,
love that
love it.
he is such a fan of your book. Of course, it makes sense. But and I hate to interrupt you, but I read that book early in my business career as well. And so tell me about why the E-Myth was so important.
Yeah, well, so I'm not much of a reader. Yes, I've just written a book, WTF, Willing to Fail, but it's a different thing for me to try and actually pick up books and read them. But somehow, someone told me when I tried to franchise my business, they said you got to read this book, The E-Myth. I think that'll give you some clarity. And Michael Gerber said, if you want to franchise your business, you want to grow and scale, systematize it, create the processes. Even if you don't want to franchise, if you want to just scale a business, set it up like a franchise. And sure enough, mine started to look, feel, and act so much like a franchise that I ultimately chose that model. And what I think inspired me about the book is it was so simple. It really talked about, if you want to scale a business, work on your business, not just in it. Create the systems that will allow you to scale. So, true story, I read the book once. I was sitting on a beach, and I actually, once I closed that last page, I opened it up and read it again. And it had such an impact that I really wanted to make sure I captured the key messages in the book. And then I set out to E-Myth my business. And it's funny because Michael Gerber is 82 today. I did a little birthday video for him for his 82nd birthday. He's been a fantastic mentor and friend, and just love what he's created in that whole E-Myth process.
I just think that's so cool. The book had a similar impact on me, and he's absolutely one of my heroes. And not knowing that, of course, just as an observer, as I saw your business take off, because I don't know if you realize, I grew up in Montreal, Canada, and I lived in Toronto for years, and so you and I are both Canadians. Anyway, so I paid attention. I spent time in Vancouver, and you were always just one of those businesses, those small E entrepreneurial businesses that I loved, and not just because of everything we just talked about, but also you saw an opportunity to really what I would describe as design a whole category here. You created a market that did not exist before.
Yeah, and it's what we've tried to do with brands that have come after 1-800-GOT-JUNK under the O2E brands umbrella, which stands for ordinary to exceptional. If you think of our why and what it is we're trying to create, is we take ordinary businesses and make them exceptional through customer service, whether it be junk removal or whether it be the house painting industry. But we're also trying to take ordinary people like me, a high school dropout, a college dropout, and helping make leaders exceptional entrepreneurs. And so O2E brands, if I look at Wow One Day Painting as an example, fragmented mom and pop painting space, nothing sexy about it, but we're able to take a space, as you said, that just doesn't have the professionalism and add systems and add branding and add all these ingredients that make it what it is today.
And so how do you think about it from a from a category perspective? How do you convince the world that a ordinary thing that is done maybe in a less professional way and a less repeatable way, where there aren't maybe national brands that are trustworthy and reliable and so forth, how do you convince the world that a category like junk or paint or whatever it is needs to have that kind of professional, national, international kind of outfit?
I think we connect with brands. I think people love this concept of love marks, a brand that they adore, that they can connect with. And so I don't know if we ever try and convince anybody. I believe instead of trying to tell people, I believe in a show, don't tell type philosophy. So we show people. When we show up in clean, shiny trucks with friendly uniformed drivers, people go, wow, you guys are awesome. When we do follow-up calls to gauge someone's net promoter score, what did they think of the service? What can we learn? They tell us. They say things back to us that we know matter to them, that they're actually preaching back our own brand, saying, your guys are friendly, your trucks are clean and shiny. We created that. So we're just creating a brand, believing what we believe in, and then letting our customers tell us, yeah, we see that's important or not important, and off the brand grows.
I just love how simple it is. I'm involved with this nonprofit, Brian, called One Life Fully Lived, started by my dear friend Tim Rode. And he, like you and like me, started as a small entrepreneur, and as a kid to kind of make money, he just spray painted the numbers, the sign, the street numbers on the side of the road of homes, for however many bucks it was, right, just to make a living. And I delivered newspapers as a kid, and I got thrown out of school. I didn't graduate high school either.
Love it.
But so it's just so funny to me that in these, and I love that you call it ordinary or ordinary to exceptional, right? I love that in these ordinary, drab places where most people wouldn't bother to look, you've looked and you've made incredible things happen. It's so freaking cool. You don't have to be doing blockchain AI.
No, and I think there's a lot of young entrepreneurs, and I don't just mean young in age, but young in their starting cycle of building a business, where people think, oh, it's got to be an app, it's got to be sexy, it's got to be easy, it's got to have some technology. But I meet people that are in the Bitcoin blockchain world, and frankly, they don't really understand what they're getting into.
Yeah.
And so I think simplicity is an incredibly important part of whatever someone might build. Now, nanotechnology and all this sort of great stuff that people are doing to change the world, that's important, amazing work, but it doesn't have to be that direction. People can really go with something simple.
Yeah. Now we have this word around here called losery that I made up to make failure sound better. You know how the Australians have like a cute name for everything. They call
Everything.
sunglasses sunnies and board shorts boardies, and they make everything sound awesome. And so losery is my attempt to make failure or losing sound
That's good.
better than it actually is. And I've sure had a lot of losery in my life. And so I'm
Hmm.
very curious, why a guy like you who on the surface, you're the epitome of success. You named your book Willing to Fail, WTF.
Yeah, to me, failure needs to be my best friend in order for me to continue to grow as a person, to be better as a leader, to inspire others in our business to live their best life. I, I've never wanted to be someone that just wins easily. Someone looks at this business from the outside and they go, wow, 300 plus million in revenue as a junk removal business. Wow, they got lucky because they were first. No, we didn't get lucky. We failed and failed. And it took us 8 years to get to a million in revenue, which is very slow growth. Yet things started to take off over time because of the momentum and the sheer perseverance that went into this. So if I look at the things, in writing the book, so Roy Williams and I wrote the book, and the title we started with, this was Roy's idea, was Happy Like Me. He said, you're such a positive, happy guy. Tell stories of happiness and make it,
Yeah.
happy like you. And I said, I didn't love the title, but he said, don't worry about the title. The title will come when we're done the book. And sure enough, it did. The theme that was woven throughout was failure. And so we came up with this fun WTF. I mean, it's what you ask yourself or say to yourself when one of these moments is happening, but it's also one of those things where you go, okay, now that it's happening, what am I learning? What am I going to do differently? And so celebrating failure, we really have a WTF mentality at the Junction, our head office, and with our franchise partners. We want people to make mistakes, but we want the learning from it. A mistake without learning is useless. And so I've never wanted the type of success that's easy. I've never wanted, what happens when we win as human beings and we have success without failure? I think it often feels unearned. It feels like a hollow victory. But wouldn't you rather taste the type of success where you've gone through disappointment and regret, longing, and you just somehow persevere and endure and get through, even when it seems like at times giving up was the best option available at hand, but you didn't give up? Those are the kind of stories I want to be telling.
Absolutely. And, because I feel that very much in my own life. I've lost more money than I'll ever make, and I have uh, sort of screamed and punched and cried more than I've cheered. And hopefully, I've
Sure.
laughed through a lot of it. But, anyways, uh, all that sounds right and true, and it is absolutely for me. And in those moments of losery, it fucking sucks. And so, how do you deal with that failure? How do you deal with 8 years to get to a million? How do you deal with all the setbacks along the way? Because it really does suck, and it sucks in a way where not only is there the hurt of the thing, but there's also the sort of the death of the future that you were trying to create. Because in your mind, you're like, well, if I'm failing now, then maybe I'm not going to get to where I want to be, and so it can be really a giant bummer. And so, how do you deal with all that?
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, let's be real. It does suck. It does suck when it's happening, but I think it's a paradigm shift to be able to sort of step out of your body, if you will, and go, hold on, this is happening, and you're right. Christopher says it sucks. It does suck, but how do you look down on yourself and go, I'm going to learn something from this. I'm going to allow the learning to present itself. I'm going to have the courage to say, okay, cool, another failure, and to know that this was a stepping stone towards a greater place. When I fired all 11 employees in 1994, it was hard going from 5 trucks down to one. It's all I can drive at a time. And there I am trying to rebuild my business. And it effing sucked, as you said. But I will say, you know what? Thank goodness it happened then, because I would hate to take my 500 plus employees now and have to get rid of them because I couldn't make the business work. I
Yeah.
learned about finding the right people and treating them right because of that painful failure, but it made me a better person and it made us a better company.
Wow. Very, very well said, Brian. The other thing I'd be curious to get your feedback on, one of the things I've tried to do in my life is to realize when I embark on any project that I feel is a worthy project, something I want to spend some time with. Um, I I sort of acknowledge a couple things. One, that the real gift, the real reward is that you get to go on the journey, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the
Mm-hmm.
destination is that you get to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there's no thing that you master that you would, if you could master it in a day or an hour, then it wouldn't be anything that mattered to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you sort of, to your point, um, what makes it worthwhile is the challenge and the losery that is therefore going to happen along the way. And then I try to tell myself, look, there's gonna be losery, man. Like, it's gonna hurt. It's gonna be problematic. You're gonna want to quit, all that kind of stuff. And in a weird way, that's kind of the point, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, or at least is part of the point. But how do you think about it?
Yeah, I think, losery, failure, whatever it is, you've got to, I like that you mock the word a little bit, right? You're taking yourself seriously, but not the failure. It's kind of like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm a loser. It's losery. It's okay. Let's move on. I think if people, so I look at it this way. One of my children, I remember a few years back, I'd pick her up from ski school and she'd say to me, or she'd say to mom, I fell today and it hurt and this and that. And I remember saying to her one night, I said, listen, like skiing, when you're learning, you're going to fall. It's just part of the sport. But what you got to do is know that each fall you have will teach you how to stop falling and teach you how to get better at skiing so you can enjoy it. And it was funny because the next day she went to ski school and pick her up at the end of the day. She's like, guess what? I fell today. It was awesome. And somehow getting her to see and shift her mindset to going, okay,
Yeah.
falling is okay. It doesn't mean I fail. It doesn't mean people are making fun of me and laughing. It means I'm learning and I'm going to get better.
Yeah.
And I think if people can take that simple philosophy, nobody wants to fail, but you need to fail to get to success because you can take a plan. I mean, I have never met one entrepreneur on the planet. I've met thousands upon thousands of them. I've never met one who said, yeah, I wrote a plan and I went out and did it. The ones that are successful wrote a plan, it didn't work, they changed the plan, they added to the plan, took away. They needed to learn over years. And someone smart once said these overnight success stories sure take a long time. I
Yeah.
mean, hell yeah, 29 years of building this 1-800 got
This
junk at
junk
O2E
business.
brands.
You're
Oh,
coming up on your 30th junk anniversary.
yeah, but I'm loving it. I'm loving it, and I'm loving life. And it's because I've learned. It must have been 15 years ago that I realized it is about the journey. It's not
Yeah.
about the destination. We talk about building $1 billion business just because we know we can, and it's a fun challenge. But that'll be probably one of the most boring days in the career of our business is the day we hit 1 billion, because we'll already have hit it in our mind. We'll
Right.
already have celebrated it, and the real enjoyment comes from the challenge to get there.
Isn't that the craziest fucking thing? Uh, like, you aim for this goal, and it's this big goal, and then you hit the goal, and you're like, that's awesome. And the next morning you wake up and you got to take a poop, and you got to, like, it's just
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Like, and
It,
so there's something funny about that. That it's like it's awesome, and you should celebrate it like, a sports team celebrates a world championship or something like that.
yeah.
But the reality is, the next morning you wake up and you're still you, and life's still
But
life, and
but I think when we realize how each one of us operates, so a realization I had maybe 3 years ago, and so it took me 45 years to get to this realization. I love Christmas. I love the holiday season. Every single night has to be a Christmas movie. You got to have the eggnog, the warm drinks. I mean, whatever, right? And I love the Christmas season. But Christmas, I find I'm always disappointed on Christmas Day, and I find it sad and disappointing. But I had this realization, it's the journey. It's Thanksgiving, US Thanksgiving, all the way up to December 24th. That's amazing. And you know what? December 24th can be not that great. It's never going to meet my expectations. But now that I accept that, when I accept that on the 25th, the kids are going to get up way too early, they're going to be grouchy because they've had so much sugar and chocolate for breakfast. They're going to be way too loud. They're going to leave garbage all over the house. Toys are going to break and they're going to cry. It's like, it's not my expectations. It doesn't have the magic. But the magic to me is leading up to the 25th and enjoying that and having a clear mind of what the future is going to look like has made it all okay.
It's so great. And it's such a powerful aha. And I, like you, it took me a long time to sort of get there. And it also, maybe you can help me with this, the adjustment to that realization. You know, the way I would say it is, and it sounds sort of weird, but I don't really have goals like I used to have, if you know what I mean. I do have goals. There's things I'm striving to and so forth. But as a younger guy, there was like this, you know, I got to go out. I got to tackle this thing. I got to prove this thing. I got to build this thing. I got to make it. You know, the question in my life, early in my life, was, is Christopher even going to make it, kind of thing. And so, you know, there's this battle you're fighting. There's this mountain you're climbing. And then one day you realize that, yes, there are more mountains you want to go climb, but maybe I'm not saying this very well, but sort of the way you think about it has shifted dramatically because of what we just talked about, Brian, because you realize that, particularly if you answered the question, you know, am I going to make it? Am I going to be okay? Can I pay the rent? Can I have some kind of you know, once you sort of get that shit handled, then it's like, okay, so, you know, a fourth car is not as good, right? The 27th Porsche or Mustang or whatever your thing is, you know, or like watches, you know, your first awesome watch is like, oh, and then, you know, your 78th awesome watch is not the same. I don't have 78 watches, but
sure,
that's what I'm trying to communicate. You realize that your life is still your life.
I think it's understanding what makes you tick, and we're all different. I'm not a money guy at all. I talk about $1 billion in revenue just because I know it's a big challenge to think, well, what if? How could we get there? You know, the opportunity of just working together as a team to rally around that goal. But I drive a Toyota pickup truck. I don't have a fancy, massive house. Like I'm not a guy that would have a second, third, fourth, fifth car and all these sports cars, because that wouldn't drive me. I would rather see people in our company have the things and the people and the opportunities they want to surround them. And so I think it's just the expectation of what makes us tick, what makes us happy, and then sticking to that. And like you said about goals, I've shifted my way of goal setting as well, in the sense where I used to be obsessed about a goal, saying this has to happen. I'll look at a goal and I'll say, well, so what if it doesn't? Something else great will happen. I'll go that direction of the goal and I'll work my butt off to try and make that goal happen. But I don't just attach myself to that outcome. I free myself up for other cool things that could happen if I shift directions.
You know, that reminds me of one of my favorite old sayings, which is success is about failing in the right direction. Right? We start off here, to your point. We think we're going to be doing this, and then maybe this doesn't go. But then that, you know, like my first business failed terribly. But then I got a great job at a startup, and that led to other things, which led to other, you know. And so had my first business been successful, I don't know, maybe I would have been you. But the fact that it failed led to a whole bunch of other great things. So you also gain that with time. Now, I do really want to ask you, Cameron has been on this podcast a couple times.
Awesome.
And in a world of management guru assholes, and there's a lot of them, this man is a giant. I mean, he blew me away. And so I got to ask you about working with him and how the two of you kind of came together to particularly to scale the business. I get the idea and the aha, but I'm very curious. Okay, so now how do you actually scale up this junk removal business?
Yeah, so Cameron was in my forum group in EO, the entrepreneur organization, which I'm hugely grateful for that organization. Learned so much and still continue to as a member. So Cameron was in my forum, and Cameron said, "Oh, I'd never work with you." And we had lots of fun together, and we were great friends. But he just, for some reason, had that feeling. And so he left a business he was at, and I said, "Hey, can you come help with a couple of things I need some help with?" So he came in and consulted for an hourly wage. And 3 weeks in, he was having so much fun and loved it and decided to stay. And we had this conversation about, remember the time when you said you'd never work with me? Here you are. And so we went from 2 million in revenue, where I got it to pre-Cameron, to 106 million in revenue. But something started to happen after, the 7 awesome years of working together. We were joined at the hip. We loved working together. And what was interesting is, you take nitroglycerin, you have as separate ingredients, they're inert. You put them together and boom. Cameron and I were both very fire ready aim types. And you can't have at $100 million business two leaders that are ADD who want to just make crazy rapid fire decisions without necessarily being as planful.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So taking someone who, I was the best man in his wedding, super close friends, to then say, "Oh man, you got to get your best friend out of the business." He
Yeah.
wasn't a partner, but he ran it like he was.
Right.
And I sat down with Cameron and just said, "This isn't working out, and we need to make a change."
Wow.
But
Amazing how. Well, you tell me how's your relationship been since then?
yeah, so I was going to say that, so many great things have happened because of Cameron. So I dropped off a WTF book at his house the other day, and the inscription was something like, I wouldn't have had any chance without him. Like, he was so much a part of the story and continues to be. He's a great friend. I was over there for a glass of wine a couple of weeks ago. We chat constantly. We're always on the phone or texting each other, and we've been great cheerleaders and friends in each other's courts. Fortunately, I think it was obviously a painful time for him. It's a tough
Sure.
thing to leave something that you've been such a key part of. But he would tell you, and he might have said this if he was on your podcast, that it was the right call for both of us. He has become this massive TEDx speaker and been on the TED stage so many times. He's got 3 more books than I do. He's got the speaking circuit, consultancy, coaching thing that he does, and he's on fire. So he's
And
done a
he's so
fantastic job.
good. He's
So
so
good.
like, and he's so clear. Like, the whole meetings don't suck. You do. Like that
Yeah.
shit and that that stuff comes out of him at light speed. I don't have to tell you that, of course, but
Yeah, sure,
it
sure.
just it's all that is so good. Like there's just I don't know. He's so in a world of management. Bizno babble, like his clarity, yeah, and
He's
I'm
just
stoked for his
straight up.
success.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
a straight shooter. And, one of the best parts of the story is, so while that happened, that failure, the learning of needing a different type of leader to take us to the next level, we were at about $100 million in revenue when Cameron was one of 3 people that introduced me to a gentleman named Eric Church, not the country singer for those that are fans, but Cameron and Eric were in the same fraternity together in Ottawa. And he introduced me to Eric, and Eric is our COO and president. He has taken us from a little less than 100 million at the time in 2011 to almost 4 times that. And
Wow.
he's the rigor and the discipline, this 2 in the box model that's taken us to a whole new level.
That's there's so much that's great about that story. I think the thing maybe just to underscore is so often in business, when partnerships break up or people, leave or get fired or whatever it is. Of course, it ends up as being a negative thing, and whatever relationship was there goes away or is
Hmm.
significantly damaged. It's a pretty powerful thing when that can happen. And then the relationship, it sounds like, has grown over the years. So,
Hmm.
and of course, the business has continued to do well, or well is probably a mild way of putting it. So, what's the secret to scaling a business like this, Brian?
Yeah, I wish there was a secret. I think there's different ingredients into that secret. Number one for me has always been having a vision. I remember 8 years into the business when we were at about 1 million in revenue and I joined EO. I started comparing myself to others, people with $10 million businesses and $100 million businesses and these sexy tech companies. Here I am, this junk removal, high school dropout, guy going, gee, I don't know if I'm onto the right track here. And what I did is I said, okay, I'm in a bit of a depression, a doom loop here. I went to my parents' summer cottage, sat on their dock, pulled out a sheet of paper and one page double-sided. I envisioned out the 5-year future for 1-800-GOT-JUNK. We'd be the FedEx of junk removal, clean, shiny trucks, friendly uniformed drivers. We would be on the Oprah Winfrey Show. We would be all these great things, the top 30 metros in North America. And everything we envisioned, for the most part, happened. And it happened by that time frame because, to me, I crystal balled the future. I said, this is where we're going to go. I didn't know how to get there. It took someone like a Cameron Herold to help me get there. And it took others years later to continue on the story. But for me, vision is one of the big secrets of scaling a business. Knowing what it looks like and then not getting bogged down or getting down on some of the details of, how is this going to happen? I didn't finish high school. I don't have the money. I don't have the skill, whatever it might be. Just think of what if, just dream up pure possibility. And the world's best leaders, you look at Googles and the Apples of the world, the Amazons. I mean, all three of those stories are spaces where people just dreamed up from a nothing business that became world-class brands. Coffee with Starbucks or Subway for sandwiches. I mean, there's nothing fancy about coffee and sandwiches, but it can be done if you've got a vision.
It's incredible. Well, Brian, this has been an awesome conversation. Before we kick out of this one, anything else you'd like to add?
You know what? This has been really fun because I've been on a lot of podcasts, but you ask some really fantastic questions. It's got me being introspective and reflective, and I appreciate that. I mean, you might get something out of this conversation, but I'm getting probably a lot more by the questions you've asked. So I don't think I have anything to add. My brain is full, and I'm grateful for the opportunity. And I love your style. You got a good attitude about you, and a lot of similarities in the way we think.
Well, thank you for those kind words, Brian. I have been a fan of yours for how old's the business now? When did you change from Rubbish Boys to 800 Junk?
Would have been 19 years ago.
So what year is that? Help me.
Probably, yeah. So 1989 I started. Yeah, so okay. Probably 1999.
Yeah. So I don't know exactly when I would have heard of you, but it would have been fairly early, as a Canadian and stuff, and always loving to see Canadian entrepreneurs do so well. So I have admired you from afar, obviously gotten to know Cameron a little bit and become a huge fan of his. So I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for giving me this time. And I want you to know you are welcome back anytime you want. If there's things on your mind or something you're learning or working on, you want to come and have a conversation with me about it, you're welcome.
Very cool.
You're welcome to come do that anytime you want, Brian.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Christopher. Do you have a book? Because if not, I got to send you one.
I thought your publicist was going to send me one, but it didn't get here in time for this conversation. So there may be one in flight.
There must be one. Yeah, there must be one on the way. It's been really interesting with the whole Canada Post strike. It's been interesting with just Amazon seems to be growing so quickly that couriers can't keep up and get packages out because it's incredible the delays we've experienced.
What a bummer.
So one would be on the way for sure. Then I'm glad to hear that. And,
well, I can't wait because, like I said, I've been a big fan for a long time, and this conversation's been awesome, and I have no doubt that the book is awesome.
Cool.
So thank you, Brian, and I look forward to chatting with you again soon.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks so much, Christopher.
Stay
have a good one,
my friend. You too.
You too, man.
Bye-bye. Whew. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Brian as much as I did, and I want to thank you so much for hanging out with us. Now, are you still struggling with QuickBooks? Are you tired of trying to stick handle around aging business systems, fragmented, crappy reports, and never-ending increased IT costs? Maybe it's time to switch from QuickBooks to NetSuite's cloud solution that enables you to lower costs, streamline key business processes, boost productivity, and become a lot more competitive. With NetSuite, you can manage your business end-to-end with one integrated business suite for all of your core processes, from selling to inventory to accounts receivable to order management, accounts payable, the whole thing. NetSuite is the #1 cloud ERP offering, and it is the platform for growth for high-growth entrepreneurial businesses. So if you want to stop wasting time and resources on upgrading and maintaining a hairball of on-premise software, maybe it's time to move to the cloud with NetSuite. Go to netsuite.com/different today. And while you're there, you can set up a time for a free 1-hour growth review with an expert in your industry. That's right, a free growth review with an expert at netsuite.com/different. Now, if you're looking for us, you can check us out at lochhead, lochhead.com. Again, the show notes, we put a lot of effort into those. There's key takeaways in there, and there's always links to, in this case, the WTF book from Brian and how to get a hold of him. Also, while you're on lochhead.com, subscribe, because even if you subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Player FM or Overcast or any of the podcast players, we don't know you're there. The only way we know you're there is if you subscribe on lochhead.com. We never, ever will sell your name to anybody. Doesn't matter how much they offer us. And we're going to only email you when we think there's something to email. We've been terrible about emailing, so it's been over a month. So we won't bombard you, I promise. Lochhead.com. And if you want to email email us here at the podcast, send email to blackhole@lochhead.com. And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Lochhead. All right. We would like to thank the new book, the awesome new book, WTF, Willing to Fail, How Failure Can Be Your Key to Success, with our friend and guest today, Brian Scudamore. A podcast that I love, the Mission Daily Podcast, a podcast for smart people who want to get a lot smarter. This is one of the fastest growing podcasts out there. The #1 bestseller from Heather Clancy and myself, Niche Down, How to Become Legendary by Being Different. Why not check it out on Amazon.com today? One of my favorite nonprofits, OneLifeFullyLived.org, where we help you dream, plan, and live your best life. And if you're an entrepreneur, you work in the entrepreneurial world, you need to check out growwire.com. There's a ton of great content on here, folks, about innovation, growth, new strategies, new technologies, new approaches. There's a podcast. There's a YouTube channel. Check out growwire.com. Now, if you're an entrepreneur and you're looking for some help so that you can scale yourself, why not think about a virtual assistant? That's right. They're cost effective, and man, they help you get a lot of SHIT done. Check out bottleneck.online. That's bottleneck.online. To learn about the power of a virtual assistant today. And another nonprofit that I love, Habitat for Humanity. Habitat's vision is simple, a world where everyone has a decent place to live. Check out habitat.org. All right, I need to remind you that this oddcast is the sole property of the Lochhead Oddcast Network, and we would love you, make no mistake, if you care about what we do, if you want to say thank you, even if you don't really care that much. Why not share this episode on social media? Your shares make the biggest difference you can imagine to our growth. Now, we must warn you that this oddcast is clearly produced in a studio that does contain nuts. Remember, teach kids it's okay to fail. Support your local entrepreneurs. Remember the sage words of Tom Waits, who said, fishing for a good time starts with throwing in your line. Don't forget to buy John's Crazy Socks. Don't be lame. Get out of the passing lane. It's not a cruising lane. Thank you so much, Candy Dandy. Love you, Mom and Dad. And hey, Colin, this oddcast really ties the room together, doesn't it? Today, our deepest apologies go to Richard Kelly, chairman of Pacific Gas and Electric. Sorry, Dick. We just ran out of time for you. That's it, my friends. Thank you so much. It means the world to me that you would invest part of your life with us. And until next time, follow your different.